Hello, everybody. My name is Patrick Dunn, and I'm the Executive Director at the New Haven Pride Center. Thank you so much for joining us as we sit down for yet another event of Pride New Haven, which is taking place this year from the 13th of September until the 19th of September. We are really excited to be sitting down with a phenomenal local artist tonight. If you caught earlier on social media, we did a fabulous virtual tour, and we are now excited to sit down with her. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in the fabulous Zulynette. Just move everybody around. There we go. Hello, Zulynette.
Hi.
How are you? Thank you so much for joining us.
I am so excited. I'm very honored to be here. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. um, Sorry, ringing phones. Probably a telemarketer. Well, super excited to sit down with you. It seems so long ago that you submitted your application to be a part of this year's Pride celebration. We didn't have COVID then. It was a completely different world.
Yes.
So I guess what I'll do is I'll let you introduce yourself first before I start pounding you with questions. But
Sure. So my name is Zulynette. You may call me Zulynette. That's how you pronounce it. I am a queer femme Puerto Rican artist, poet, powerhouse, author, podcaster. I do a lot of things that fall under the umbrella of poetry and art. This is my full-time life. This is what I do all day, every day. And it's been like this for 4 years now. So yeah, out here. Oh, pronouns are she, her, by the way.
Yeah, she, her, and I am he, him for the most part. Well, I'm like I said, I'm very excited to sit down with you. I really find your work very inspiring. It's exciting to have you doing this solo show after our Latinx and queer show over the summer, because there was some interesting thematic combinations. For the sake of our audience, I am going to quickly just read off the description of your show. And somebody said Superwoman, so that's a pretty awesome way to start the talk. So I'm just going to read off your show. So this show speaks to a cycle of identity reclamation. The cycle consists of challenging the stories fed to us. Who we are, where we're going, what we ought to be, a metaphorical, I knew I was going to say that wrong, a metaphorical death of a past identity and a growing into a new form of being. The paintings that I have chosen for this show capture moments in time of taking back and defining my identities, my queerness, the person I want to evolve into, the parts of me that are gloriously unladylike. These pieces, all of my pieces, serve as a challenge to, I forgot to copy the whole description. sorry, I'm very well organized, I promise.
This is poetry in motion. I love it.
Well, it's your word, so it makes sense that it would be poetry. Challenge unladylike. These pieces, all of my pieces, serve as a challenge to what queer and/or Puerto Rican art can look like. It is a confirmation that everything created by me is ultimately femme, Puerto Rican, and queer. Sorry, Christopher, I didn't copy the whole thing. So I just think that that's really powerful description, and it like really sets a tone. And it was interesting because I read that, 2-3 weeks ago when we were emailing back and forth, but then I read it again right before we did the tour, and we had done the installation. I'd already had some time to look at the art, and when I reread that, I was like, I totally see it.
Perfect.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. Like, obviously you have a fabulous collection of work. You're doing the 366 days of art. How did you pick these pieces? Like, what was that process for you?
Yeah, so I really wanted to stick to the theme of an evolving identity, of my evolving identity, with the particularly with the drawings, with the 366 challenge drawings. For folks that don't know, I started that at the beginning of the year, where I challenged myself to create a drawing every single day of the year. So not all of them are that deep. Not all of them have to do with my identity. Some of them are just doodles. Some of them I did at 11:59 p.m. and just to get it done for the day. But some of them did speak to themes that have to do with my identity, such as queerness. Um, it had to do with things about being Puerto Rican. It had to do with things like feeling alone. A lot of my work delves into my inner emotional world, and some of the drawings that I chose were specifically, they speak specifically to that. So there are very fragile, I want to say, there's some very fragile, sensitive pieces in there. Like one of them is a masculine body, but the head of him is flowers. I had also actually done that piece for a cousin of mine who had lost his grandmother. So I had given that drawing to him in that spirit. But yeah, so I was thinking about those recurring themes in my life of being challenged, of going through identity transformation, which is why a lot of the pieces are skulls and representative of death. Because for me, death is a metaphor. It is a metaphor for us taking death into our own hands and enacting it in our own lives so that we can create space and room for new things to grow. And then some of that is represented in some of the pieces, such as there's a couple that I have of women with cactus needles sticking out of them. And that's representative of me not giving a fuck at some point and embracing that I am a little rough around the edges, and that I am edgy, and that I can catch that attitude with folks and protect myself, defend myself and people that I love if need be. And doing and embracing that part of my personality and my identity unapologetically, along with being queer and along with being Puerto Rican, while also, again, as you had read, challenging what that art should look like. There have been many occasions where people have invited me to showcase art for Hispanic Heritage Month or for Pride, and said, could you showcase queer art, or can you showcase Puerto Rican art? And it tends to get pigeonholed a lot, that it needs to look a certain way. The queer art needs to have rainbows. It needs to have people of the same gender making out, or the Puerto Rican art has to have a Puerto Rican flag. It has to have a coquille on it. It has to have all of these things that aren't necessarily true, because we're not a monolith, and those aren't the only things that represent us and who we are.
So I would be remiss if I did not plug the fact that we're actually having a talk all about this on Wednesday. So if you have nothing to do, on Wednesday at noon, we are doing a whole talk called "What is Queer Art?" where we're specifically challenging this idea of like, how do we define queer art? And does it have to show same-sex identity or gender identity for it to actually be queer? Or can a landscape be queer art because the artist is queer? So thanks for giving me that natural plug. I am going to, I'm going to pick at some of the things that you said, because there was some really great. So one question I do want to ask before I start picking into some of the other stuff is, how has the 366-day challenge changed for you over 2020? Because 2020 has been a doozy. And 2020 has been a really special year. Yeah. And so how has your approach to the 366 challenge changed? Has it become almost self-care for you? Has it has it become a way of expressing frustration towards 2020?
Yes to everything you just said. So it's it even you saying that 2020 has been a doozy. I have actually said that the 366 challenge has been a doozy because when I started it this year, it was very different than what March looked like, than what May looked like, and certainly what the summer looked like. So wasn't there a funny point in time where we were like, oh, we can't, this will be over in April. Look at us now. So it's evolved in a way where I'm allowing myself a whole lot more freedom than I did in the beginning. In the beginning, I specifically wanted it to be a tool for kind of sharpening my own self-discipline and doing something every day that wouldn't also drive me a little kooky, and then thusly I would give it up. Like if my goal was to wake up at 5 a.m. every single day, I know I'd quit within 3 days. So it would have to be related to something that I love. But the way that it's changed is there is a whole lot more critique in it, in terms of what's going on around me. And at the same time, there's a lot more freedom in it because I don't want it to be something that's restricted. I don't want it to be something that is only responding to the times. I also want it to be somewhere where I can take care of myself, where I can be silly. And some of my drawings are silly as hell. There's an avocado somewhere in there. a very bougie looking avocado, though. But yeah, so I've kind of allowed it to become whatever it is that I needed, which I think is the freedom of it. So if it needs to be something that is used to critique, cool. But for the most part, it's just a place to just express and get out whatever, or to try new things and explore.
Do you use a prompt at all, or is there anything that you use for inspiration daily or weekly?
Not really. I have a ridiculously large folder on Instagram where I just save images that inspire me, and then from there I kind of go. And make it something of my own. If it's a style that I've never tried, then I like to try it on for maybe like a couple of days just to get it, let it become muscle memory. Sometimes my inspiration comes from me just asking folks around me because I'm just stuck. Again, there are days where it's just a doozy, where it becomes labor. Still love it, but labor nonetheless. So I'll just ask folks around me. I've asked my nephew, who is 7, what he wants me to draw. That ended up being an eagle and an alien with a spaceship, and a goat getting abducted by said spaceship. There's there's the avocado was inspired by my partner. She said she wanted to see an avocado that went to prep school, and nice. So that I created. And so, so sometimes it comes from the folks around me. Sometimes it's my emotional state. Sometimes it's seeing a style that I'm inspired by and I want to try on and see what it feels like. Oh my goodness. Shout out to Anthony Allen, who just commented. We did name the avocado, and the avocado's name was Harrison Gareth Crosby III. Yes, thank you, Anthony.
So that's, I want to go into some of the pieces that we have from that collection, because I will say, I mean, I love all of your work, and we spent a lot of time on the frog today, but I really love the 366 because of, like, once I understood from kind of looking closer at your price list and stuff and understood the connection between them, I was like, oh, and there were some really amazing moments in them. Like, one of the ones that I really love, and it goes to what you were saying about the women that have, the women figures or femme figures that have these kind of prickles, is the image that you have that has like kind of all of these negative things like slut shaming and I forget some of the gender norms, and one of them has clearly gotten too close and popped. And I love the message of that piece, and I love the kind of idea of strong feminine, strong femme, strong women characters that you portray in many of your works. Would you say that kind of prickle comes from like direct lived experience? Like, is that how you see yourself? Do you have your little prickly armor that you wear?
Sometimes, yeah. It's certainly, the thing about the prickliness is that it also comes from a very soft and vulnerable place. A cactus is growing those spines so because it needs to protect something, and so uh, with with that drawing in particular, it was her happily protecting herself against the things that femme folks are conditioned to accept, are conditioned to like, are conditioned to deem normal, such as some of the things on there were sexual harassment, were fragile masculinity, and all those things that we need to protect and coddle and learn how to maneuver around. And I made that specific drawing with the idea in mind that if those things come around me, they're going to pop. I'm not out looking for them, but if you come around this way, those things aren't acceptable. Those things are not okay, and I will protect myself against said things, because it's not acceptable, because it's not good, because it's not healthy. And yeah, like in a nutshell, I do absolutely see myself as that sometimes, and sometimes I'm just the flower that's on the cactus growing out of it.
Which well, you can be both.
Right.
Yeah, no, I really like that, and I loved the other thing that I really loved about a lot of the 366 images is that when they were images of women, they were beautiful, sexy, real women. They were not this like Barbie caricature that artists do sometimes without even meaning to, right? Because it's so ingrained in humanity to look for the Barbie doll image or the supermodel image. And I loved that, these femme characters that you were portraying in a lot of these pieces, whether they were the paintings or the 366s, were all really, they felt real, but they felt sexy and empowering and beautiful. And in some cases they were only bodies, right? They didn't maybe necessarily have a head, or they didn't have, and it was really cool to see that portrayal.
Yeah, so that's very new for me. I would say I only just started creating real bodies this year, because I was very much perpetuating, I would say, my art prior to this year very much perpetuated the stereotype of what a woman's body or what a femme body should look like, should be shaped like. And this year, I wanted to challenge that. I wanted to challenge my own body image. I wanted to challenge what it is that I am creating and thusly perpetuating, because whether I know it or not, people are looking at my art, and that it gives a message, whether I mean for it to or not. So this year, for the first time, that is actually something that came out of the 366 challenge, is that I started to draw fat bodies. I started to draw curvier bodies. I started to draw realer bodies. Some of them included stretch marks. Some of them included the rolls. Some of them are big ass thighs. And it's like, that's real. That's what I grew up with. That's what I know. Those are the women that I know. I don't know models, and that's not to body shame folks that do have those bodies. But it's a challenge that's what a body ought to look like, in particular in art, that a femme form needs to be shaped a certain way in order to be artful, in order to be tasteful, in order to be sexy, in order to be beautiful or attractive. It's bullshit. And it's my own bullshit. It's bullshit that I carry. It's bullshit that I learned. And again, that I was intentionally or unintentionally perpetuating. So it was, that's relatively new for me, is drawing and perpetuating different bodies. And that's really exciting.
That's awesome. I'm going to really accidentally excuse myself because my computer just is not charging for some reason. I just need to figure out why it's not. 1 second, because I don't want to die on you.
Okay. For the folks that are here with us, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, we're here. Talk to us. What's up? You know, like, don't be silent. Don't be passive. Be active in this process. Be with us in the room. Thanks.
Okay, there, I got it. I got it charged.
I held down the fort while you were gone. Don't worry about it. It's cool.
I appreciate it. No, it just dinged at me. You have 3%. And I was like, what? I'm plugged in. Where was I'm sorry. I just had like a panic moment of like.
It's gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right.
Oh, I know. I want to ask you about a very specific piece.
Sure.
So you use the word thusly and is giving me life.
Thanks.
We get lots of hellos from people, lots of people following us.
Hi, Aw, Shannon. Thank you.
So I want to ask you about one specific piece because it is my favorite piece and I have already committed to buy it. So it will be going home with me, even though I do not need more art. And that's the I call it the Red Riding Hood piece, even though that's not really what it is. The piece with the kind of wolf-like figure coming down on the child. And so I would love to know more about the inspiration behind that piece specifically. And I just want to do a shout out for anybody who's watching. If you would like to watch the virtual tour, it is currently on Facebook and Instagram, and it will be on the center's YouTube tomorrow. It just takes about 24 hours to get it uploaded, but it will be on there tomorrow and you can watch it.
Cool. So about that piece, it was very much something dedicated to my own inner child and to everybody's inner child, because everybody has an inner child. And in that particular drawing, the image is of a little girl in little footy pajamas, and she's glowing. She's glowing and she's smiling. She's tiny in the image because then swooping up and over her is like the shadow of a wolf, and it looks like it's going to come down on her. And so I wanted to make her brave because in one way or another, I think we are all adults recovering from our childhood. And so I like my background is in social work and participatory action research. So when I start talking about like theorizing of like attachment styles and whatnot, just know that's where it's coming from. And so it's like a healing piece for our inner child to be brave, that those shadows that we're scared of, those monsters that we're scared of, aren't even real. And not only are they not real, but in them not being real, we can almost play with them because they're make-believe. So in the image, she's just looking up at this wolf, at this big scary wolf, and is just smiling, is glowing, and is just smiling because she is the light, and light will always push out the dark. So that's what that piece speaks to.
I love it even more now. I'm just saying the label is going up with a little red dot already on it.
Yeah, sure. I'm okay with that.
So there are a couple of questions that came in the audience that I will ask. So thank you for those of you who have already posed questions. I'm going to ask one more question before I ask those. And that's so your exhibit is the first exhibit the center has had that really has this interactive component. And so for anybody who does not already know from either watching the tour or from reading the description online, in the exhibit, on some of the name cards, there are QR codes that you can scan on your phone that allow you to interact with the piece through inspirations and the written word of Zulynette yourself. And I guess I want to talk to you and just get your thoughts about that, because I love this interactive component, and it's the first time the center's ever had something like this as part of one of our exhibits. So I wanted to give some space for you to talk through the audience about how that is.
Sure. So a friend of mine, shout out to DJ Be Easy, that's his name. Maybe 2 years ago, we were talking about doing a show together where we would bring together music and art. And we were going to make it something simple where I would just showcase art and he would play music and people would dance. And it never happened. And I was still enamored with the idea of showcasing that artwork, which at the time was themed all around galaxies and outer space. I love, 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 love creating galaxies in my pieces. And so because the show never happened, I decided I would just do something on my own. I am certainly not a DJ. That's not my lane, although I know some great tunes and I'm great for car rides. But when the show came about, I was like, how can I do this in a way that feels intimate and brings together music and brings together art? So I created labels for each of the pieces and attached a song to each of them that was either the mood of the piece or was something that I was listening to when I was creating the painting, so that folks could sit and pop some headphones in and just really connect with where I was at when I was making that piece. The show was called Space and Sound. It's been one of my favorite shows so far that I've done. I'd love to repeat it. So it sort of came from that, I was very moved by how you could get to different feelings through different avenues. And so you're not just seeing the artwork, you're also in a way hearing it, you're hearing the inspiration, you're hearing the emotion behind it, and connecting to it in maybe a way where you are familiar with the song. So with that, I took that idea and I ran with it for this show, and attached some of the pieces have songs attached to them, songs that come to mind when I'm looking at the piece. Some of them will send you to a poem of mine. So you'll see some poetry videos of mine somewhere in there in the show that have to do with the paintings or with some of the drawings. And I think only one of the links will actually send you to the process of creating the painting. So there's this huge 36 by 48 painting of a cactus woman, and you will hear me reading there's a poem written on her. You will hear me reading the poem that's on her while also seeing her be created. It's a time-lapse video of me painting her. So I was just thinking of all these different cool ways that folks could see the process, could get the emotion, could get different senses activated at the same time. So yeah.
That's awesome. No, I'm really excited because I did QR 2 of them, and one of them was the time lapse. It was like pure chance that I just picked 2 random ones, and it's really cool how that kind of extra layer of interaction you get as a viewer, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did pop up for anybody who missed it, and I'll pop it up again right now. The information, you can actually come and see Zulynette's work in person, even though we are not currently open to the public on a kind of large scale. You can actually come and see the exhibit in person on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And if you do watch the virtual show, I think everything but one is for sale. So you can also take something home with you. Not to be all marketing me, but
No, but make it rain for real.
We at the New Haven Pride Center very much agree and support paying artists for their work. So I'm gonna ask some of the questions that we got posed, and one was from YouTube, and it says, "What spaces do you go to find inspiration?" And I'll pop it up.
I find a lot of inspiration through conversation with folks. People speak in really rad imagery, and I say that people speak in poetry all the time. So I pull a lot of imagery from what people say. I love words. And growing up bilingual, words are far more moldable. I don't even know if moldable is a word, but see, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And
Yeah,
so
I was a English major, and I can say you can make up words.
And so I have fun with language in that way. Again, some of my pieces have poetry on them, so sometimes the inspiration comes from that space, from my writing. If you mean like what physical spaces I go to, I don't have a really good answer. Sometimes poetry is mad inconsiderate and comes at me at very inconvenient times, like when I'm driving, and I have put myself in dangerous situations. I'm owning it, and I'm doing better at it. Trying to get a line down and trying to get some poetry down. So if that's what you mean by spaces, it's everywhere. If you mean like what mental spaces or where that inspiration comes from, I would say it comes from conversations. It comes from music a lot. I love music. And it very much comes from my own inner emotional world, like thinking about how I'm feeling and saying this feels like like the cactus woman, for example. I feel when I'm in that space, when I'm in a very protected space, I feel like like a cactus, like nothing can touch me, like nothing should touch me. And so then the visual comes from that. Yeah, as an example.
I know I love that idea of being inspired by anything. And I feel like most artists say that, but I like the connection to this idea that poetry and words, and I am also bilingual, and so like I get what you're saying about the kind of fascination with words, and this idea of like language being an interesting point of inspiration for things. I know as a writer, that was always the language and using. Sometimes my inspiration would come from like wanting to use a really interesting word that I had come across, because being in a way English is my second language, sort of. And so if I found this like really fascinating word and I was working on some piece, I would want to work it in somehow, and I could spend hours just brainstorming around this one word. So I totally get what you're saying.
Yep.
So we have another question from Chris, which is, what's your favorite spell?
If by spell you mean which painting, because I call my paintings spells because I think of them as setting an intention for something. I see them as healing something, changing something, closing a chapter finally. So I see all of my paintings as some sort of spell because they all have some sort of intention. Even if the intention is to be cheeky and to have fun, that's still a very good intention. So if you mean which painting, well, it's really a doozy to try to pick one. But one of my favorites is she is at the Pride Center, and she is called Queen Death. And you can see her. she's tucked away in the corner, but you'll know her when you see her.
I have to ask you a question. That question.
If you mean like what kind of just regular schmegular, like regular witchy spell, it would just be, my favorite spell would be consistently transforming into the new version of the baddest motherfucker you'll ever meet. That one, that's my favorite.
I like that. So I have to ask a process question.
Sure.
I spent probably way too long asking this question of myself, not that I would know the answer, while doing the virtual tour. So on Queen Death, there are these beautiful droplets of blood, paint, something liquid. And I was curious if you did those before, after, or while painting the main figure.
That was after.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I
It's,
just she was actually painted. Well, I started her live at an event, at a music event. Um, I had gone there and I had no idea what I was gonna paint that night. And when I got there, I was just like, let's just do what we do, because I do enjoy the theme of death, of change, of transformation. If you're not comfortable with the word death, um, and so uh, she came about, and there was something that was kind of missing, I think, at the end when it was just her standing there. And so I did one drop because I didn't want to commit to all of them if it looked awful. But then uh, it felt like the period at the end of a sentence when I added that. And so those definitely came at the end. Yeah.
it's really fascinating because, and I said this on the live tour. It reminded me of local artist Tony Ferriolo, who has several pieces with these kind of droplets, and it was in his case an accident. Well, not an accident like a bad accident, but it was one of his paintings got wet, and it created this dribble, and he was so inspired by it that he has several that he literally takes like a hose and goes to get them to dribble. And the placement of them was so delicate, but then also very not like it felt haphazard, but also so delicate. And so I was very much like I was so curious is what point in the process they came, because they're also so perfect that they don't, like, you can't tell where they are in the thing almost. And
Yeah.
so, and if you'd already painted everything and you did that 1 centimeter too long, it could ruin the whole thing. So it's just I was very curious about where that came from.
Yeah. Yeah. Heard.
um, oh, so we got another question. What one constraint or limitation actually helps you conceive, create, and or transmit your spells and poetry?
I think something that helped, first of all, great question. I think something that had helped was the spaces that I've been in, meaning I used to have an apartment of my own and it was stacked with artwork. Um, and it was really cool to have that sort of space to exhale, to let it out. And I've also created in very constrained, tiny spaces. I have lived in an extra room in my parents' house that is not actually a bedroom, and I didn't. There were times where I didn't have an easel. There was a time where I didn't have gallery wrapped canvases and the niftiest paints. So I would say, I mean, if we named it, now that I'm like saying all this out loud, I think if we named it, poverty was something that was really interesting to experience as an artist, because you learn to make with what you've got. And so I think it really helped, like once I was able to get the fancier materials, or sometimes even people would just gift me with more expensive products and stuff like that. More expensive. I'm saying that like the billions of dollars. But I ain't dropping $20 for a paintbrush. But if you will, thanks. So I would say with things like that, then when I had those materials in my hand, I felt like I could use them, not even like, how am I trying to say this? I felt like I was already a pro. I felt like I was already a pro when I got the pro stuff in my hands, because I knew that I could do more with a lot less. Because I had. I'd been creating for a very long time, and it wasn't without, it wasn't without art education. I didn't go to school for this. I didn't go to college for this. there was literally a time in the 366 challenge where I was at the hospital with someone, and there was no paper or pen around me to create. I didn't have my notebook. I didn't have anything on me. I didn't have my materials on me, so I found something to draw with at the hospital, and I drew like on my hand because I knew how to. And I've drawn on napkins, I've drawn on envelopes, I've drawn on notebooks, I've drawn on handouts at school. I've painted on broken shelves, on all these sorts of things that you know, when you think of your professional artist, when you think of your professional artist, that's not where you go to in terms of what it is that they create or what they create on. And so I think having those sort of limitations and having lived through, experienced poverty actually helped in the end, because now I know I can create from nothing. Yeah.
And isn't that the sign of true artists who, you know, create regardless, and it just comes from within your soul?
Yeah. So one of the questions I asked myself a lot before I quit a full-time job at a nonprofit was, if nobody buys your artwork, if nobody sees your artwork, if nobody hears your poetry, if nobody asks you to facilitate diddly squat, are you still going to create the thing? I had to really sit with that question. Are you still going to create regardless? And when my answer was yes, when I got to that answer and felt confident in that answer, then I knew I could take the leap, because now nothing can stop me.
Yeah. And I'm
oh, good.
So we have a few minutes left. One of the things we didn't really talk about was kind of where the Latinx Puerto Rican part of you came into this exhibit. Like, I feel like we focus a lot on the femness and the queerness, and so I wanted to give some space for that. And I say that after having just spent an entire day yesterday on racial justice work, and you know, talking a lot about anti-Blackness, but also creating spaces for talking about Latinx identity and other racial minorities. And then going into the rest of Pride, where we continue to explore both racial justice, but also the intersections it has with queer identity. So I guess my question kind of is, how does the pieces that you selected for the show, or maybe not all, but most of them or some of them, kind of elevate that side of the larger description of the exhibit?
Yeah. So one of the ways is the pieces that have poetry on them. So where I'm from, or where my family is from in Puerto Rico, is Toalta. And the nickname for Toalta, you know how like Connecticut is the Constitution state? Toalta.
I'm sorry.
Toalta is known as La Cuna de los Poetas, which is the cradle of poets. So to incorporate pieces that have poetry on them is a nod to that. It's a nod not just to being Puerto Rican, but to specifically where I'm from and where my family is from in Puerto Rico. And also, there is one piece on there where I like snuck the cookie in a big way, which you may know. So that nod, there's a humongous piece with a big old frog on there. It's called I Will Not Bury My Love Story. It's a very romantic piece and a very queer piece. And that was also, the piece mostly deals with queer love and with me not hiding that. Not hiding who I am and not hiding who I love. And so I also stuck a frog in there intentionally because one of the symbols of the island is a cookie, which is a little tiny frog. and except I blew it up to 36 by 48. And so that's also a way that I show a nod to being Puerto Rican. There is a lot of homophobia in Puerto Rican culture and in Puerto Rican society, and so intermingling all of this queer identity along with and queer theme along with these pieces is also a challenge even to that aspect of my identity. And so I think that's where it comes from. I did hear earlier that there was I hadn't even made this connection, but y'all did. There's a piece where there's a heart and there's boxing gloves hanging off of the heart. Boxing is big in Puerto Rico, and so I didn't even know to make that connection, but it came out. And funny enough, if I'm not mistaken, I believe I created that piece when I was in Puerto Rico last month. I hadn't even thought of that consciously, so y'all made that connection for me. Thank you. I appreciate you. So, and I want to reiterate the point that was in the description of the show, which is these pieces already are Puerto Rican. These pieces already speak to my Puerto Rican identity. And in the same way that they speak to my femme identity and to my queer identity, in that I'm the one that created them. I'm Puerto Rican because my parents are Puerto Rican. And so since I birthed these babies, they are also Puerto Rican and speak to my experience as a Puerto Rican human being, even if they don't have the Puerto Rican flag splashed all over them. And so I think for me, it's in each of the pieces, regardless of whether or not they nod in overt ways to the island.
That's awesome. You're getting.
Hi, Shalise. Checking in all the way from Alaska. Appreciate you.
Ooh, so again, I want everyone to know that they can watch and check out the virtual tour so they can see all of the pieces that we're talking about on the New Haven Pride Center page right now. It will be on YouTube tomorrow. Let me do a little, there we go. And you can also come and see the exhibit in person. Oh, wait a minute, what's that? And you should all come and see it because it's amazing. And I want to just give space at the end to see if there's anything else you want to tell us that I didn't say or ask.
Oh my goodness, so much to say. First, I want to thank you again, Patrick. I want to thank our interpreter friends here for being here, for everybody who checked in and asked some great questions. I see that Anthony asked a question. Shout out a fellow artist you want to lift up. All of them. Oh, the homie. I have a homie, very specific. Andre Rochester, who is in Hartford. That would be somebody that I lift up. His name is Andre Rochester, based in Hartford. He is dope. And when I first started off my art career, he was very much a mentor of mine and helped me to learn, to evolve. He challenged me. Great. So that would be the fellow artist that I shout out. Yeah, if you want to stalk me appropriately, you can do so on Instagram. My name on there is _Zulynette. That's THE_ZULYNETTE. I hope y'all go to the Pride Center. I'm very proud of this show. I'm very excited about this show. It's called How to Spell, again, because I consider all of these pieces, the paintings, the drawings, I consider them spells in some way because each of them have an intention behind them. Each of them have some sort of alchemy in them, something that I wanted to transform, to transmute, change. And whether it was heartbreak, whether it's joy, whether it's heartbreak to joy, that's where the magic part comes in. It's changing where you are to where you want to be and where you want to go. So I hope y'all get something from being around the spells.
and you can come and check it out in person. Wait,
Yes,
there,
you
wait,
can.
there. It is up until the end of October, so you have no excuses really. And if you are in Alaska, you have time to fly here.
Real casual, just fly to Connecticut, see the show, and go back to Alaska.
Yeah, come on, it's not like there's a pandemic going on. But I want to thank you so much for being here. I want to thank you for you lending your art to us to have and showcase. And I want to thank all of you who joined us today. I am going to pop up a commercial, this is part of Pride New Haven. We said that at the beginning. Pride New Haven is going on for the next 5 days until Saturday. And we have a whole slew of more programs coming up. But definitely come into the center and come and check out this awesome, awesome show. It's a not to miss. For sure. And with that, thank you, everybody.
Peace.